time, you have to be comfortable doing the boring things pretty much forever. As a leader, it's no longer about how good you are, it's how good your team is. You can be the best salesman in the world, but if you can't teach sales, it doesn't matter.
Right. Would you contribute a lot of your success to like you were passionate about what you do?
Not really. I was passionate about not being broke. People think that, you know, doing 100,000 a month is much different than, let's say, $1 million or $2 million a month. It's really not. It is more complex in the sense you have bigger teams and more clients, but that's where the complexity comes. It doesn't come from what you actually do. You're just doing the same thing faster. The biggest thing I've learned is understanding that failure is part of the process and being okay with it.
Kickin' Ass, Taking Names podcast, and today we are here with Tanner Chidester. Tanner, this is really interesting because you're one of the first guys that I've interviewed since Cody Sperber that has been like a big ads guy that I've seen from ads, and I know you from ads, which is funny. But I think that that's a really interesting take on it. But hey, to give you guys some information about Tanner, and I said it right, Tanner Chidester. Chidester.
But it's close. I mean, it's hard to get, man.
Yeah. So to give you guys some feedback on like who Tanner is, Tanner is okay. So you are a personal trainer coach, as well as agency coach, right?
Yeah.
And so Tanner has done something amazing in a few short years. From basically college dropout, he has generated over $70 million in revenue.
Yeah, we actually crossed 100, I don't know, a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so from zero to over 100 million in revenue. So we're talking about like big time, you know, Hormozi stuff. Friends with Hormozi. You're going to be the next Hormozi guy. So man, Tanner, thank you for being here first off.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm really excited to get to hear more about like the strategies, the tips, the tricks, and those type of things. But what I really want to know right now is kind of like if you could give us the background before all of the big numbers is like where were you at in your life? And I know you said so many things that were relatable to everybody. So I think that would be really great to start with like your background, your story.
Yeah. So I grew up in a family of 7 kids, 4 sisters, 2 brothers. I'm the oldest boy. Very sheltered
How old are you right now, by the way?
How old am I now? 32.
32, okay.
32. So I was in a very sheltered household, just turned 32 actually a couple days ago.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. So very sheltered household. My dad was the equivalent of a pastor, very religious. So nothing wrong with that, but just grew up very sheltered. And because of that, I got picked on a lot as a kid. I also had 2 older sisters, so that didn't really do me any favors because they want to play dress up in tea party. So I didn't have maybe the most masculine qualities as a young boy. And so around the age of 12, I started to realize that these kids were making fun of me. And I went to my parents and said, hey, I want to start working out. And so as a 12-year-old kid, no one's working out. And I remember I did that, and about 3 months later, I started getting a lot of respect. Guys started complimenting me. I started excelling in sports. Girls started noticing, because I'm 12 and I have muscles, and no one who's 12 is working out. And that really was a pivotal moment for my life where I said, man, if I work hard and I do hard things, good things will happen. And because I was good at sports, I started taking sports very seriously. So from 12 to 22, the way I have attacked business is how I attack sports. And I would work out anywhere between, I'd say on the low end, 4 hours a day up to 9 hours a day, anywhere in between that time period. I got all the way to the Division I football level, got hurt a bunch, could go into that. But I mean, there's nothing much to say. I just had tons of shoulder injuries, 6-month rehab, would get hurt, rehab, get hurt. It just was a nightmare. So I knew that wasn't going to work out. And at that time, I had a mentor and a friend of my dad's come to me, and he said, what's your goal in life? Because I was going through, I don't know if I want to say depression, because when life sucks, it's just sad. You're just normal. And I said, well, I don't really know what I want to do, but I want to make a lot of money. And I'd always wanted to make a lot of money because I didn't grow up with a lot of money. My dad was a teacher. And then, like I said, he was a pastor. My mom stayed at home. And so my dad always made ends meet, but he always had to work really hard. And I just remember telling my mom I wanted to be able to order those like special meals, those pre-made meals for bodybuilders. And I was like, I'm going to be rich so I can, buy those meals. And so anyways, we have this conversation, and he says, what do you want to do? I just want to make a lot of money. That's why I'm an engineer. And I was studying petroleum engineering, which is one of the highest 4 paying year degrees. And he said, well, there's a lot of other stuff you could do besides that if you just want to make a lot of money. I said, what? And he said, well, you should start a business. So he took me on as his mentee, and I started working out of his garage. I dropped out of college with about a year left. I had a 3.9 GPA. I actually did a post on Instagram yesterday about, there's a screenshot of one of the girls who I was talking to at the time who, just kind of said I was a loser and so forth.
I saw that.
Yeah. And so that was a really difficult time for me, but he started teaching me all about building an offer, low ticket funnels.
Wait, so where did you meet your mentor?
He was a friend of my dad's. He's actually went to the same church.
Okay.
And so he just wanted to help because I think he saw I was going through a tough time. I think he also was hoping I would get a little bit more back in a church because I kind of shifted away from that. And so he started teaching me everything he knew about online business. And what was great is I wasn't making any money, but during that time, I learned how to connect Stripe with funnels and email campaigns and all these things that a lot of people take for granted that most people don't know about. And so I do that for about a year and a half, but I'm not making any money. And I think it's mostly because I wasn't doing high ticket products. And, we can delve into that, but it's hard to sell something low ticket when you don't have a big following and you can't spend money on ads. And that's what I was trying to do. So a year and a half goes by and I say, hey, I'm going to move out. I need to kind of spread my wings. I'm 24. I'm going to turn 25. It just was, there wasn't really any other reason. I just felt I needed to kind of get out and be a man. And so I start going to do door-to-door sales to try to make some more money. Because in my head, if I make more money, my business will be successful, which isn't true, but that's what I told myself. So I started doing door-to-door sales. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It was 9 months. 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, 4 hours of driving, 2 there, 2 back, and then 8 hours of knocking. And it was a nightmare. Hardest thing I ever did, but I really learned how to influence people and how people thought, objection handling. I mean, anything you can think of. And so one day as I'm considering going back to school, this was the 5th time in about a year and a half period where I'd considered going back to school. I'd call my mentor and say, man, it's not working. I have a shitty apartment. I have a crappy car. Girls are laughing at me. I mean, I felt like a loser because you go from king of the castle as an athlete to nobody. And a lot of athletes go through that, and it's really hard for a lot of them. So I see an ad on Facebook, similar to probably ads people have seen in me, and it says how to start an online fitness company. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect. And for people who don't know my background, I was very, if you look at me now, like most people still consider I'm in shape, but I was super jacked. Just, all I did was work out. Mm-hmm. And so I got on the call. It was $5,000. I had $2,000 to my name. So I give them $2,000 on the call and I'm sweating bullets. I'm sweating bullets. I wish I could have recorded it. I'm sure it was pretty funny. And then I got a credit card for $3,000 and paid them that. And I get in the program. I start watching the videos and I'm a very straight shooter guy. And I kind of feel it's a lot of fluff. And I say, look, just tell me what I need to do to make money. And they said, okay, just start messaging people on your social media and get them on a call and then charge $1,500 plus. And I was like, there's no way that's going to work. And they said, just try it. I was like, okay, well, I have nothing to lose. And I just paid these people $5,000. So I was like, all right. So I get on the phone with clients and I make $10,000 in a week. And at the time I was only making $3,000 on average. And that was my oh shit moment. That was probably the most pivotal moment where I said, I finally figured it out. So I call my parents. I move home. I quit all my jobs. I pay my parents about $1,000 of rent so that I can spend all the money on my business. And that year I go from 0 to $1 million in a year, just grinding 16 to 18 hours a day. Just did not care about anything else except making money. And that was in my fitness company. So I get a ClickFunnels award and people see that and they go, that's the fitness guy.
Yeah.
That's the online fitness guy who's not a business coach. And so it gave me a lot of credibility that the business I built was not consulting. But what happens is because you're successful, all these trainers start, hey man, can you help me? Can you help me? And so I had a list of about 15 trainers who want to pay me $10,000. And I'm going,
and do you think that part of it is that the people who assume that you can help them and assume that you have this credibility also somewhat builds this like persona in you that you do have it, and then what happens is like you then live into that person?
Yeah, I mean, it just naturally happened. And to be frank with you, I just wanted to make money.
Yeah.
Like I do love helping people, and that's definitely become more natural to me over time because after you make a certain amount of money, it just gets very, so what? But the biggest reason I started doing that was there was a need. People were asking. I saw the opportunity. And so I just did it. There wasn't a lot of thought that went into, oh, I'm going to be a business consultant. I never thought that. I actually hated business consultants, which is the irony. So I did that. And then that year we went from 1 million to 10 million. That was the craziest year of my life. we literally 10x the business. Grant Cardone would be proud, right?
Yeah,
like 10x.
I really want to ask you about that.
Yeah. And then more people started asking that were outside the fitness industry, and that's how Elite COs came about. And then that trajectory has just been up and up, and we just crossed 100 million recently. So it's been about 6 years to get me from zero to that. And, the first year I only did 1 million, so we picked up a lot of ground. And that's really my story. So to date, if you looked at my clientele, we still get a significant amount of trainers because obviously that is a big demographic for us. But then the other half is what I consider general business, which is not trainers. And again, it just naturally happens. So there's stuff that I could go back and say, maybe I shouldn't have done that, or I should have niched down, or whatever it may have been. But at the time, it just naturally seemed to progress. And most of the business owners, even a lot of the billionaires I've spoken to, what I do find interesting is when I'll ask them, how did you come up with this idea? It just almost naturally presented itself as a problem, and then they just fixed the problem. In fact, I don't even think it's happened one time where they said, well, I just planned this out.
Yeah.
It just naturally kind of happens, and they see the opportunity and they pounce on it. And so I think that's a lot of what happened with me. And so that's a little bit of my long story long. It took a little while to get through that, but that's my story.
So I'm really curious about the time frame. This is my first question. I'm really curious about the time frame from the first like 100,000, first 50, 100K to like the first, like million, because you said that you were 24, 25, still figuring it out. Yeah. But by age 28, 29, you already had it built up, right?
Yeah. So I started trying to build a business at 22. When I say try, there were things I wasn't doing. Like I thought I was being productive, but I wasn't. But that was the first time I considered, okay, I'm not going to go to school anymore, and I'm going to build a business. And from 22 to 25, I took a lot of lumps. Right. So I was learning all these things along the way. So door-to-door sales, that's why I'm so good at sales. I tell my clients all the time, if you go do door-to-door sales for 9 months, you will be good at sales. I mean, you could do it for 3 months.
I think if you could do it for more than a week.
I mean, yeah, it's extremely difficult. I did that. I learned all the automations in the back-end system. So when I started running ads later down the road, years later, when I actually had money, I knew how to connect it. I knew how to set it up. I knew how to do emails, automations, all these things that a lot of people take for granted. So 22 to 25, I made hardly anything. Once I started making money at 25, that was when I really swiped my first credit card. From 25 until about 31, that 6-year window, that's where I've made all the money. So the first 100,000, really, if you want to take it from ground zero, took me probably 3 years to get. And then the first million took me less than a year. Because once you get it figured out, it's just doing the same process over and over, and then speeding that process up. So, people think that, doing 100,000 a month is much different than, let's say, $1 million or $2 million a month. It's really not. It is more complex in the sense you have bigger teams and more clients, but that's where the complexity comes. It doesn't come from what you actually do. You're just doing the same thing faster. So if I make 100 grand and then I want to do $1 million, you might spend $200,000 on ads, but everything else stays exactly the same. The hard part is now you have more team members, you have more staff. There's more complexity from the scale more than it is from the task you're doing.
What about like retention? How do you keep retention?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this in the car. Consulting, the hardest thing I've learned about consulting is that from what I've seen, 30 million a year is about that peak, depending stereotypically. So for example, we were saying this in the car, Iman Godzi, right? Most people know who that is. He's got 4 million subs on YouTube. So some of those rules will not apply to him because he has such a big audience. I think he could sell almost anything and get sales. So that's not the average person. For most people who don't have a big following and they're running predominantly paid traffic, which is what you're going to have to do those numbers, it usually caps there. And the reason it caps is your cost of acquisition gets too high. And then I would say in consulting, if you have under 15% attrition, you're good. And that's per month. Most products or businesses, it has to be below 2% or 3% or even 1%, depending on if it's SaaS. So the hard thing with information is that it's valuable until people have it. And as soon as they have it, it's no longer valuable. And you'll see this all the time where someone might have been in a program and gotten great results. And then they will say, well, I could have figured that out on my own. Maybe they could. But the hard thing with information is that to continue making it valuable, you have to keep giving new information. And the thing in business that a lot of people don't like is to build big businesses. It's not about new things all the time. It's doing the same thing over and over again. That gets extremely boring. I went through this, I'd say maybe 2 years ago, where I started traveling a lot and I started trying to figure life out. And there's a whole conversation we can have on that. But what I realized in business is that really to be successful in business for long periods of time, you have to be comfortable doing the boring things pretty much forever. You do the sales meetings, you shoot ads weekly, you show up and give clients support, you run client events. You're not doing different things. It's just you're consistently doing boring things. And I think that's hard for a lot of people because by nature, human nature, we just want more excitement.
And we think that the exciting thing is what's going to make
we think the next program or the next Facebook post or the next YouTube video or whatever is going to be this magical formula, but it's really not. It's just consistency over time. And that's something I had to learn the hard way in terms. And then to segue that, people go, okay, well, then what else can I do? From what I've seen talking to a lot of billionaires and people who've sold for 9 or 10 figures, et cetera, is that a lot of them have the internet marketing skills and then they segue that into new opportunities. And when I say new opportunities, the opportunities that everyone can get the same result, meaning in consulting, no matter how good your program is, right? Even Sam Ovens, which is what most people consider kind of the OG to the online space, he had a great program. It was like consulting.com, et cetera. But not everyone got the same result because not everyone has the same level of skill. So the businesses that I've seen is when you can segue internet marketing skills into a business where everyone gets the same result. Let's say examples that people might know. Alex Becker did Hyros. It's a tracking software. Everyone gets the same result. Sam Ovens has School. I think that will sell for over $1 billion. It's the same result. Regardless of how good or bad you think it is, it's the same result. Anything where the least of these, the least intelligent person can get the same result as the most intelligent person, that's what you have to strive for. And so realistically in consulting, you cannot do that. The only way you could do that per se is typically you build a done for you model, but done for you models don't scale unless caveats again, right? There's always these caveats. So I always wait for someone to throw in a comment, but let's say Gary Vee's ad agency, he works with Apple or Google or whoever, where they have these massive budgets and he can pretty much do anything and get them a result. But for an average business owner who maybe makes 10 to 20K a month, it's not going to work, or you're not going to be able to scale it because it's way too much overhead. So to wrap that up, in theory, if I could go back to my younger self and tell myself what to do, I wouldn't have done anything different. I think the only thing I would have done is, as I grew this business, segued those skills sooner into a newer opportunity that has a higher ceiling, which is what I'm doing now. And that's not to take anything away from what I've done or to say that the business I built isn't great. There's pros and cons to every business, but you're not going to make a consulting business typically and sell it for big money because of that churn, of that attrition that just naturally is going to happen at a higher scale than, say, a SaaS company or something like that.
Okay, so this is a really interesting one. You've spent over $3 million on coaching, right?
Yeah, a lot.
So what have you learned spending over $3 million?
The biggest thing I've learned is 80% of it sucks and 20% is good. That's just how it's going to shake out. I think a lot of people get frustrated with coaching and consulting because they think every single program is going to be the magical pill. But realistically, failure is part of the process. And so as I've paid for more and more coaching, I'm okay knowing that something I pay for has an 80% chance of not working. Because if I took all the coaching I did and I took the top 20%, I was like, which made the biggest differences, the other 80% is over here. And I'm like, I could have skipped it. But I wouldn't have known that without doing it. That would be the biggest thing I've learned, is understanding that failure is part of the process and being okay with it. People seem to think that they can skip it, or that, hey, if I don't make this decision, I'm not hurting myself. But what I've learned is that the faster I've spent money and learned, it's actually helped me be successful quicker because I know exactly what not to do and what to do. A lot of people, they don't understand the opportunity cost. So for example, the 2 years, 23 to 25, where I didn't hire a coach, I made $2,000. At 25, I started paying coaches and I did $1 million. Then I did 10 million. Then I did 15. Then we did over, So I think a lot of people are scared, but realistically, there's a book called Who Moved My Cheese? And I love that book because the whole book is about mice. And then at the very end, it'll flip it and it relates it to humans. But the whole point of the book is there's these 3 mice in a maze, and they have food that's dropped down every day and they eat it. And then eventually the food stops coming. And so they have this big debate what they should do. Should they leave to go to try to find new food, or should they stay? And 2 mice, they stay. And the 3rd mice is like, why are you going to stay? You might die. They're like, yeah, but we might die if we leave. And he's like, yeah, but you're 100% going to die if you stay. We haven't had food in months. So the 2 mice stay and this 1 mouse leaves, and he goes through this, crazy journey, but eventually he finds food and lives. And then they flip it to humans and go, that's how humans think, where they're so sick and tired of where they are in life, but they would rather stay there, which is safer. It's a sure thing, than venture off into the unknown and they don't know what's going to happen. And that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned. And there's really no secret formula. I mean, you'll hear entrepreneurs say boring stuff, do the boring work. You're only as good as your team. And you're like, yeah, whatever. And then you get there and you realize you just do the boring work. You're only as good as your team. I mean, it's just getting good at the basic stuff.
So what I heard on another podcast, I think you were on the Stick Talk podcast.
Yeah.
And you said that when you work with or when you don't really like the raw coaching style, motivation mindset. But I know you're working with a mindset coach now. So how do you don't you identify a lot of what you just said as like a mindset?
I think for some people they might view it that way. I think for me, I just grew up doing a bunch of hard things, and my only mindset was, yeah, this sucks, but it's my only option. And I never viewed it. I don't think I ever really viewed that as a mindset. I just viewed it as normal. I saw my dad growing up specifically. My dad's one of the hardest working people I know. And I didn't know that until I was older. And I saw other adults and I said, wow, my dad works way harder than your dad does. And so that was just normal to me. I think what I mean by rah-rah is a lot of people, they want to feel motivated. They want to go to events and they want to, be jumping up and down and stuff. And so, for example, I've said things like a Tony Robbins event. I'm not against Tony Robbins. I think he's great. I'm sure he's a good dude. And I'd probably learn a lot from him. But if I go to an event and it's just to inspire me, I don't see the point, because you're only going to be inspired for a very short period of time. Most things are very exciting in the beginning and then they get very boring. Or that gets, it's just another day of the same thing. But that's what actually breeds greatness. MVPs in the NBA, it's who was the best over the whole season, not who had the best game. So that's what I mean more by rah-rah, is I think a lot of people, they need someone to constantly motivate them and watch videos and all this stuff. And I just don't think that's a long-term formula for success. I think you have to be okay waking up and doing things that you don't really feel like doing that day. And that's what makes it worth it, because if you want an extraordinary life, but you only do easy things, by default, it can't be extraordinary, can it? It must be difficult. And so I just think it's ironic that people want things to feel easy all the time or good, but then want these extraordinary lives, which is the exact opposite of what it would require. In terms of the mindset coach I have now, it's not even necessarily mindset. I think it is. I have my biggest issue with the mindset community typically is the people who seem to be leading the charge don't live lives that I would want to live. And that's nothing against them. I don't care what anyone does, but I usually would have people give me advice on, well, say affirmations or do this or, the crystal stuff. And again, I don't care. But the way they would present it, I'd look at them and say, but you're not like making money and you're not successful in my eyes. So why do I want to do that? The guy I'm working with right now is very successful. I mean, he's worth multiple 9 figures. He might be worth 10 figures. I don't know. He hasn't told me, but I know for sure because he's had 600 clients who've paid him at least 200 grand, and he's had clients who've paid him multiple times. So you start doing the math, it's definitely over 9 figures. And I really went to him for more personal stuff. I didn't really go to him for business stuff. But what I've realized, and I think we all know this, is that obviously what you say becomes your thoughts, what you think becomes your actions become your life or your results. And so it's been more around those types of things, about changing my thoughts. I'm very good at just ignoring my thoughts and doing the work, but I think in other areas of life, you have to be conscious of what you're thinking of, because what you think about becomes what you desire and what actions you take and stuff like that. So we could delve deeper into that. But I think for most people, I think at the highest levels of the game, it becomes more mindset than strategy, because no one's going to show me anything in a funnel or a marketing campaign that I don't know at this point.
Yeah.
I've seen it all, but learning how to think differently, I do think is different. But I think for most beginners, that's not a thing. I think they need to just get over not feeling good and just do the work. And then I think that can come down later in the game. That's at least my opinion. You know, I'm not a prophet, but I mean, that's my 2 cents.
Okay. So I want to bridge the gap now, like between, just the, like, if you're an agency owner, right? And you're looking to scale, like, I feel like I'm starting an ad right now.
You're good.
And like, okay, I want to get the framework, okay? The framework that works for me. Because there's so many people, even a lot of people who watch my podcast, I notice, like, I'm scaling a business for six-figure business scaling to 7, 7-figure business scaling to 8. But what's like your framework that you use? You're like, hey, you got to have these elements.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I've learned over, X amount number of years.
I think the best person who broke it down was Alex.
Yep.
And $100 million offers. I've never had someone, in fact, I was doing those things, but I didn't know I wasn't able to explain it in that sense. And so there's 2 things I tell someone to look at. So the first thing is typically, is it in health, wealth, or relationships? Most people who start out, everyone wants better health. They want to make more money, and they definitely want better relationships. I haven't met anyone who says no to that. So typically it needs to be one of those 3 categories. If the result is not tangible, people really struggle to sell it. So I'm not a big fan of people looking at Tony Robbins and going, I want to be Tony Robbins. Well, you don't have Tony Robbins' brand. You know, I want to do Kim Kardashian. You're not Kim Kardashian. They could cut their toenails, put it in a bag, and sell it. You cannot. And so when there's not a tangible result, for example, someone does a mindset program, I'm not against mindset. It's just sometimes it's not tangible. So they'll say, you'll feel more abundant. You'll be happier. Well, for 10 grand, what does that mean? Well, you'll be more abundant. I was like, okay. That's hard to sell to a stranger. But if you can put it in the health, wealth, and relationship niche, you'll make more money. You'll have better health. You'll have more dates, better sex with your wife, whatever it is, that is sellable. So there's that. Then the next part is just how Alex broke it down. So if you read $100 million offers, I could summarize a whole book there on one page. But it's talking about the determined outcome, which is kind of that health, wealth, relationships. Like, is it something they want? Okay. Then it's the level of risk. Then you come down here and it was really time, and then it was effort, right? So what can you present to someone that they think that they actually want, where there's low risk, and you're going to get them a fast result with little effort, and you get as close to that as humanly possible. And I think that's the best explanation I've ever seen anyone give of how to make a good offer. So for example, there was a guy I brought up earlier too, I won't mention his name, but he helps people get on big podcasts, and he was really struggling to make money. And I sat down with him and said, well, why are you, let's go through your offer. And the way he was presenting it was not very good. He just said, yeah, like, I'll help you get on big podcasts, and it's this much. And yeah.
Is this what we talked about in the car?
Yeah. It's one of the guys in, like, earlier in this room.
Okay.
And so I sat there and said, but that's not really why someone should hire you. Think about it this way. If you could get someone on a podcast that gets, let's just say, 1 million downloads a month, and then they're spending money on ads, $20 on Facebook ads usually gets you 1,000 impressions, meaning 1,000 people see your ad. So if you do the math, if I pay this person 10 grand and he gets me on 5 podcasts who get 1 million downloads, that's way cheaper traffic than if I pay Facebook 100 grand. And so, for example, he was like, oh, I wasn't presenting it that way. I was like, yeah, you got to make it logical for most people to scale, especially to cold traffic, because they don't know you. So they don't trust you. They're like, what is this guy trying to get out of me? So you have to make it very logical. And that's where I think most people fail. So to summarize, health, wealth, and relationships, use $100 million offers framework. And then if you were going into a sales pitch, I can get more into that. But it's what are the top 3 things that make you different, right? So even me as a business consultant, there's 1 million business consultants.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten even more red as I've been doing it longer. So part of what my sales team has to do and my marketing team is, what are the things that make us as a business consulting company different than everyone else? And that's the whole play. And if you can't do that, you're going to struggle. $100 million offers talks about having that unique offer, and that is key. But if you have an offer that more people are selling, like an ad agency or business consulting or a fitness trainer or whatever, then it's really more how you position it. Like, what do you say in your marketing that's different than other trainers or other business consultants? So hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, and also that brings me to a video that I saw of Alex Hormozi that really changed the game for me,
Yeah.
which was I had like this continuous like 4-month mark where like I couldn't even go into a relationship for more than 4 months. How was I
Yeah.
going to stay in a business?
Yeah.
And so every time I got to that point, I'd hit it and I go, oh, okay, it's not working. Okay, next. Hit it. Oh, okay, it's not working. Next.
Yeah.
And what I saw in this one video from Alex, and he explained it perfectly in a chart, like actually in a chart with an X, Y axis. And it says, when you start, your excitement, the business, it goes down. Now, here's the part where most people quit. He goes, this is because you spend all that energy to get this bump, and then it goes down. He's like, no matter what you do, because you get to a point where things change, your paradigm changes. The business is like, okay, I actually have to know what I really need to know in order to really scale this or really grow this thing. So you get to this low point, and at this point, most people quit. And he said, the people who push through and get to this side, now you can see the exponential growth because you've had enough time in order to process and learn what you need to learn.
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, that is so my life. And I was like, dude, this is exactly what I've struggled with. It's exactly like, I wish I saw this chart like when I was like 7 years old. Because if I would have saw that when I was 7, like I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 7,
Right.
that made a huge, like I'm still gunning for Robert Kiyosaki interview. But like I saw that and that taught me like, okay, employee, entrepreneur, business owner. I was 7 years old. I didn't even know.
Yeah.
All I knew was like, I don't want to be the poor dad, like, you know, poor dad's kid. I want to be the rich dad's kid, you know? And like also in my life, I've been around enough people where I saw the difference, and I was lucky and blessed enough to do that. But in getting that whole mindset, like Hormozi's on it. And I was like, so did you ever get to a point in that? Because your story is so brief, like it almost feels like it's like, dude, I struggled for 3 years and then boom, like everything hit. It's like, then you go from 1, it's like, okay, fine. A lot of people hit 1 million, but how do you go from 1 to 10 million? And even a lot of people don't hit 1 million. I shouldn't underplay that. But what I'm saying is a lot of people in the high like level already killing it are hitting 1 million, but a lot of them aren't hitting 10 million.
Right.
So what do you think is making you different? Or makes you different?
I think mostly it's leadership. Most entrepreneurs I meet, you can get to 100,000 a month with 2 to 3 people, which means you don't really have to be that good of a leader, and you really don't even have to be that good of a manager. You just have to have, you know, a coach, maybe a couple people who do setting for you, and that's it. As you try to scale to higher levels, you realize that the more you do, the less you make. And so you have to have very good systems. You have to have very good SOPs. You have to be a master of humans. You have to know what they want out of the situation, because if you just use people just to help you make money, they're not going to stay and work for you long term. And there's a lot of mistakes I made, but I think overall I understand leadership. There's things that I'm aware that I'm deficient at, but I'm aware of it. And I'm just good at building teams and getting people to move the right direction. I think most people can't do that. Most people can't even get results for themselves. And then the ones who can, they struggle to replicate the results they've gotten for themselves into other people. Because as a leader, it's no longer about how good you are, it's how good your team is. So you can be the best salesman in the world, but if you can't teach sales, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so I honestly think that's most of it. I mean, to your point with what Alex said, I mean, that's just being consistent over time. Is, you know, there's nothing special about that per se. It's very unsexy and it's boring, and that's why a lot of people don't want to do it. But I think to really scale to high levels, you have to be a master of people. And if you look at him, for example, and his wife Layla, who's also a beast, that's what they're good at. And Layla does most, like Alex is very charismatic. He's good at marketing. He's very good with his words. He's very gravitating to people. And Layla is very good at running a business, and she runs the operations. And without that, I don't think they'd be nearly as successful. And I don't know, some people, they just don't want to learn it. It's a skill. It's a skill to learn how to hire, train, manage, etc. So I think that's the biggest thing. If I took all the clients I've worked with over the years, we've had 50,000 plus or something. I mean, it's definitely that. That's where most of my clients struggle, is they just can't build a team. They can't scale. They can't manage. They're stressed out. They don't know how to have difficult conversations with people. So they'll hire people and kind of just show them something once, and that person's not very good, and their business doesn't grow, and then they fire them and they do it again. It just, You can't scale that way. You have to be good with people.
Okay, so just if you could say like what, and I know you just answered this, but if you could say again, like what's your in your opinion, like the biggest thing that you see everybody struggle with, that's like getting started, that you, because they're coming to you for help, right? It's
Yeah.
like what's your starter call? Like how do you present to them like, hey, these are the things that you're probably like failing on?
Yeah, it's for beginners. So if we step back and we go, let's say you're starting from zero, they just are horrible at sales.
Mhm.
They have no idea how to communicate efficiently. I mean, a lot of times too, what people fail to understand is not even communication, but it's efficiency. So something I was really good with after doing door-to-door sales is I was super efficient. Why? I had to be, because we had to hit 100 plus doors a day. I can't spend too much time on the wrong person, because if I do, I can't make a sale at the next door. It's not like online where it's just, you can just, click out,
You
click
had like
in and,
smaller room for error.
right.
Yeah.
So part of it is they're just not good. Right. So, and they're not good because they haven't done the reps. And so they expect to be good. They expect to do what I did at that time frame. But I go, but you forget I spent 3 years basically not winning. And then they're just not efficient. So meaning if it takes someone 12 steps that I can do in 5, that means I'm getting double to triple the output. And that's the two biggest issues. So most times with beginners, we're having to teach them, here's how you message people. Here's how you talk on the phone. Here's what you say. Here's what you don't say. Here's the person to move on from. Here's a person who's actually interested. So you're teaching the skill plus efficiency.
Mhm.
Most people are horrible at that. And their offers are not good enough. So meaning the whole reason Alex talks about $100 million offers is what? The better the offer, the worse your marketing can be. That's the upside. So if you're selling something that a lot of people sell, you can't be the worst. You have to be the best. So as a trainer, the reason I made so much money as an online trainer was not because I'm the best trainer. I was the best at sales. I was just so good at sales and marketing that I was able to persuade other people that I was a better trainer than this guy who may have actually been a better trainer, right? And so it's just persuasion. Most people have never studied it in their life. They don't teach it at school. There's no sales class. I think it's a travesty, honestly. I mean, I would have learned more from the education system if they just taught me 6th grade and below and then let me out of school, and then I could just start doing sales and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Because I didn't learn anything after 6th grade. Everything I use in my daily life was 6th grade or below. So arithmetic, math, English, grammar, keyboard. I mean, all this stuff, like I was doing a math 5 levels above Cal 3 as an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
I've never
used it. Yeah.
in my whole life. No, of course not.
I did door-to-door twice in my life. Once when I was 10 years old,
Mhm.
and I got an investment from my dad for $40 to buy a Costco candy bar,
Yeah.
And with those candy bars, I was like, I did the math. I'm like, these things are like 60 cents each, and they were like king size.
Yeah.
So I was like, I could easily freeze them and walk around in the summer and sell them for like $2 each. So I sold those and I paid him back. I remember he was like, are you sure you're going to do it? I'm like, yeah. And I paid him back within like an hour or two. And then I made like $300. And I was like, yes. And like, of course, as a kid, I used that to buy like an Xbox.
Something stupid.
Yeah. But I do have a question about the simplicity of it, right? So do you think, because like I want to really make this useful for the people who, like, there's a specific reason that I'm like, I think you would be good like right now for particularly the audience, because I know there's people who are also scaling offers.
Sure.
And it's like super, common for people to run like a lot of the same problems.
Uh-huh.
So do you think that like they're overcomplicating the system? Because a lot of people are like, yeah, you got to have this, you got to have that, but like you didn't even use ads for years.
They're 100% overcomplicating it. So the way I started, just so you know, is I started with cold DMs and social media followers. So that would either mean I would go on an IG hashtag. So I was doing fitness. So let's say I did Fit Mom. I go there's 30 million posts, and I would just scroll down and I'd look for someone overweight, click, and I'd start a convo. Or I'd hit someone who's already following me. I say, hey, thanks for following me. What's your fitness goal? And I just have a convo, get them on a call, qualify them with like an application, which an application can be an email. And then I get them on a call and close them. I had no funnels, no ads, no tech, no automations, nothing. Yeah. I mean, I sent them an Excel spreadsheet as their program to start. People way overcomplicate it, and they want everything to be perfect. One of the things that drives me nuts is clients who say, well, I want to build my program first. I say, have you ever seen Shark Tank? Mm-hmm. That's what happens when you build your program first. You get on Shark Tank, you've loaned your house out, you've sold your children into slavery, and you're hoping to get a deal. I mean, like, there's very few deals on there that are actually good deals. Most people go on there and it's a last ditch attempt. And they're like, I've mortgaged my house. I've put all my savings into this. And I'm like, because you're selling something, you built something that you didn't know people wanted. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you do that? So if you just go out, for example, and you start trying, if you're a trainer, doesn't matter what you are, but let's say you're a trainer, and you sell someone a program that you haven't built, guess what you do as soon as they buy? Hey, give me 3 days and I'm going to get that to you, And then you build it. And it doesn't have to be perfect to start because people don't care what it looks like. They just want results. No one actually cares what the program looks like as long as it works. If they pay you to lose weight and they lose weight, they won't care if it's an Excel spreadsheet or something else. Now, obviously, I think there's levels of professionalism, and as you become bigger and grow, yeah, make your stuff look nicer, but not to start. And so, yeah, I 100% agree with you. They way overcomplicate it. All sales is convincing someone else to give you money in exchange for a service or product. So all you need is a cell phone and to have a conversation with someone, and you can sell something. And I did the same thing. I spent 3 years thinking I had to have, I built this whole system called the Rapid Muscle System. I was selling it for $47. And I wasn't talking to any people. I was having no phone calls, no messaging conversations, and I sold nothing. And then all I did is I started messaging people and having convos, and then I started making tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, then $1 million in that first year. And it was funny because I actually, when people, they won't believe this, but when I made my first 10 grand, half of me was elated, half of me was pissed off because I sat there and went, I went through all this shit for 3 years and that's all I had to do because I thought it was more complex. Because I thought there's no way it can be this easy to make money. There's no way, right? Because everyone in my life has told me making money is hard. And once you learn how to do sales, it's really not that difficult. It's just not. And so, we overcomplicate it simply because society on average says it's hard to make money. And so that is reinforced in our brains. And so we think, well, that it can't be that easy because that's not what everyone tells me. And I thought the same thing. And you won't build that belief until you just get results. So the hard part is confidence comes from results, but results only come from action. And in the beginning, you will have zero confidence because you have no results. So it's how can you force yourself to take action in the beginning when you have nothing to show that what you're doing is going to work? But that's what makes it worth it. Because you're doing something not knowing if it will work, which is why success feels so fucking good. Mm-hmm. And I think people forget that stuff. And so I constantly remind myself when I have difficult situations or someone says something that gets, riles me up, I just remember that for an extraordinary life, which I'm hoping to live, because we all live once, is hard things are the prerequisite for that life. And so it just makes sense that for you to start making money, you're going to feel uncomfortable. It will be hard. People will say it won't work. You will be tested mentally. And that's what the hard part is. The tasks are actually very easy. It's just like forcing yourself to do the work when there's no proof of concept.
Dude, you coming out with a book?
I have a book. I wish I had done better. I know we keep bringing up Alex, but I talked to him a lot. But it was funny because he wrote $100 million offers. I was like, dude, like that really was a great book. Like I read it. He actually sent it to me to read before he published it. And I just genuinely said, hey, dude, you're going to think I didn't know it was going to do as good as it did, but I said, you're going to think I'm just hyping you up. But I was like, that was a great book.
Really good book. Yeah.
And I wrote a book. It's called Infinite Income. And it talks a little bit about my story and the things I did. But I do have a little regret because I didn't spend a ton of time on it. I think I could have done a lot more time. And I remember when Alex's book came out, I said, man, how did you get it just so good where it just spread like wildfire? And he was like, well, I spent like 2,000 hours on it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
he like rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it.
Yeah, and I was sitting there like, I spent probably 20.
I think the hook in $100 million offers is still stronger. I love $100 million leads, but
yeah,
I think $100 million offers it's so hard to replicate that, like that wonder. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like I know he's bigger now, but he's bigger because of that book.
Yeah.
But that book, before that book, they didn't know who he was.
Yeah, that book was the catalyst. I remember right when all his stuff started blowing up, and it was that. I think that was the catalyst.
Do you just call him up and you know him, or?
Yeah, we talk a lot. We're good friends. I mean, I don't I don't try to abuse it or anything, but yeah, I mean, I enjoy talking to him outside of business as well.
You don't have to like make a schedule an appointment.
No, not usually. We were texting right before this. No, the way
tell him you're on this podcast.
Alex, I'm on KATN.
I'm gonna have to prepare. He's like I only get on podcasts if I notice they're asking really good questions. They do really deep research.
Yeah, really good questions. And obviously he's also trying to just make sure like it reaches a lot of people. I mean, that's normal. But
yeah,
so the way we met is a few years back. We were both having a lot of success. So he was doing gym launch. So he was kind of the in-person fitness guy, and I was the
Oh, you guys
trainer.
are both fitness, yeah.
We were both fitness. And he reached out to me to talk, but I thought he was trying to get me to like promote his stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I've had so many difficult things in my life that I'm still working on it to this day. Is it just puts out a little bit of a hard exterior where you're always looking for what are they trying to get out of the situation. So I genuinely thought he was trying to pitch me on something. And so I just ignored him. I'm like, dude, I'm not going to like sell your stuff, etc. So a few more years go by. He keeps doing well, etc. I keep doing well. And then we get in a group text. So someone adds us in a group text together. And he texted me again privately. He's like, hey, dude, would you want to get on a call? And I was like, well, I have to do it now because if I don't, it's going to be awkward.
I have to get on a call with Alex Orosi.
So I get on a call. Yeah, I get on the call and I'm very just skeptical. And he just gets on and he's just like, yeah, man, just wanted to meet you and all this stuff. And we just have stayed in touch ever since. And, he's a really good dude. He's got I respect guys who have certainty in what they're doing. And he just seems very certain in the things he says and the things he does, and he doesn't care what other people think. You could say the same thing for Andrew Tate. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, but he seems certain. Like, he seems like he believes what he's saying, and I really respect guys like that. He's also a really funny dude. Most people don't know, but he's a total idiot.
Who?
Alex,
yeah,
he's a total idiot. Most people don't get to see that side of him, but he's actually a really funny guy. He says a lot of
just jokes.
He jokes a lot, and he just inspires me in a lot of levels because I think he's the type of person that wants to be the best he can be, and I want to be around those types of people. So it's easy to stay in contact with those types of people because he's going the direction that I want to go with my life in terms of who I want to be. And there's certain things that I might think he's too hardcore on this or that, but at the end of the day, I agree with a lot of the stuff he does. I think he's a good person. I really like his wife, Layla. They're both good people. I think they are who they say they are. And they ultimately are just trying to be the best they can be. And so who wouldn't want to be friends with someone like that? But I will say, I think it helps that we're going the same direction or a similar direction.
I think it's hard to stay in rooms with people like that when you don't feel like you're expanding. Like, you got to have like an empty cup almost mentality, right? Like, if you're around all those people and you like, eventually the question is going to come up, who are you? What do you do?
Well, it's
some way or
intellectually
another.
Stimulating. Like, whenever I hang out with him, I very much enjoy the conversation because it always stimulates me. And he, anytime I see him, I'm like, hey, what's going on with acquisition? Or he was telling me about school prior. He wasn't able to tell me what the company was, but he's like, yeah, like I'm going to make this big purchase. And I like that stuff because it's stimulating for me. And I don't get to have those conversations very often because as you get to higher levels, there's less people who can relate. And it's not bad. It's just, you're usually talking, I don't want to say talking down, but it's people who are below you in terms of business success.
Yeah.
And so when I'm talking to him, I view him as obviously above me. And so I get a lot of mental stimulation out of it. And I love it. I mean, that's one of my favorite things to do is to go to dinner with someone and just talk about business or personal development or life and just have a good conversation that mentally stimulates me.
I'm not one for small talk. So like whenever I interview, it's like always very like straight to the point kind of questions. Cause I don't even think I know how to small talk, to be honest.
It's
like
hard. It's boring.
Dude, I never like, and this is why I'm trying to learn this skill, like a little bit of like that car salesman skill. Cause you see these guys and they're so good at it. Like, you'll see them, they're like, watch this, I'm going to sell this car. And I've seen these guys and they walk out and they talk to this lady. She's talking about her cat, and he's like, wow, like I have a cat, and his name is Arnold, and he's this, and I'm like, oh man, I'm falling asleep.
It's
like,
tough.
I'm like, dude, like if I were there, I'd be sitting there like, lady, like forget the cat, like, you know, like, let's talk about the car.
Yeah.
But that's like such, like, it's also a skill, like relating to people, right? It's like, that's the relativeness that you can get with people, and like just being able to get into their, like what they're about. And so it's like, I see the strength in it, but I also see like, dude, I don't know if I really want to be in that position too often. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I mean, I love learning. And so even the other day there was totally random. I just love learning in general because there's a guy I was reading up on Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And you probably know the guy. I forget his name right now, but
the Gracies or
well, he does know Gi, and he's like
Gordon Ryan,
that guy.
Yeah. And
I just remember reading that and being so fascinated how someone would grow up and get into Brazilian jiu-jitsu and do, 175 competitions and
win every single one.
He's very open about his steroid use, and he just seems like he's that type. Like, I don't know why, but I gravitate a lot towards men who just seem very driven. They're very confident in like who they are. And he may not be, but on the surface, to me, he's like, yeah, like I use steroids because I want to be a better athlete and it's not illegal. I'm just like,
dude, you know what you would really like?
Yeah.
You would really like, there's a Netflix show now that's out, and it's called Chimp Empire.
Chimp or champ?
Chimp. Like monkey, like chimps.
Okay, yeah.
Like we're on some Joe Rogan right now, but it's called Chimp Empire, dude, and it's sick. Like these, like you'll see.
It's just interesting, right?
No, it's the first ever documentary of its type because the people have been bred with the monkeys for like 25 years. So not bred with, but like they're in the same area.
Oh, okay.
So like they're part of the environment.
That sounds interesting.
So the monkeys see the human beings as part of the environment. And so they'll see a person with a camera and they'll just be like, oh, that's just like a tree.
It's normal. It's normal.
Like it's normal to them.
It was like that in Africa. I mean, I went and did safaris and I had lions.
So they're so
hippos,
used to it, but like they're so used to it that they act exactly how they act in the wild. So now like you get the real like stuff that you would never get because once you're being observed, you change. Like you're on camera. You there's a slight change in your but the monkeys, they don't know they're on camera. They're just so these chimps, like you see, it's so crazy. You see like this alpha chimp, and then you'll see like the other chimp that's like gonna fight against him. Like one's old, is like he's getting old for being an alpha, and then the other one's like coming up, and you could see like they like groom the other chimp to like be like making alliances with that one, and that one is also like the guy who's like choosing between like which one, and like dude, and they just go into like all out war, and they're just like
I enjoy learning so much that I also get fascinated by how people make their decisions. So for example, there's even a documentary on Netflix about mushrooms, and I forget the lead scientist, but it just is so fascinating to me about why you got into mushrooms and you wanted to dedicate your life to studying psilocybin and mushrooms, and I just love people who are super passionate about something and it's intellectual stimulating conversation. Obviously I love business because that's what's changed my life, and I love growing companies, and but anyone who just loves to learn and loves to grow and is about personal development, and especially in something that maybe I don't understand as well or I can learn from, I just love that, and I find it fascinating to have the conversations. Like Gordon Ryan, I would love to just talk to the guy and say, "Dude, I don't need anything from you. I just am so curious. Like, tell me what got you into BJJ, and like, why did you decide to pursue it, and how does your daily life look, and why do you do all that color in your hair?" And it's just that stuff is so interesting to me in general. I don't know why. I've just always been that way.
I think that the funny thing is though that you say because you said this, you don't like the rah-rah, you don't like the mindset stuff.
Yeah.
But to be honest, dude, I think you're like the biggest mindset fanatic of anybody. Like
maybe I am. I've heard that before, but
I genuinely think that you're like not seeing the like view of how like you are a mindset guy. You just like observing from doing, which they've done studies on guys, and they said like these guys, they put them in a I think it's in Australia or something. There was these guys and they wanted them to like have better mental health. So they put them in a room and they were like, hey, all you guys like start talking about your problems. And it's
Yeah.
like you and me looking at each other in our eyes and then talking about like, yeah, man, I'm depressed. Like it just doesn't work well.
It's more the, when I say rah, it's just, all right, like we're going to get up, we're going to do this. Like,
Yeah,
like
but-
Andy Elliott, for example, I respect him and Andy Frisella, but I don't need those guys to yell at me to motivate me.
But
Like,
here's what they did though. So what they did was they put them all in a room and they said, here's a lawnmower, it's broken, fix it, talk about your problems while you're fixing it. And then they started noticing that it had like a huge improvement.
Interesting.
And so when you're like learning from something that is like productive, like you're learning from like the productivity, you know,
Yeah.
like you're learning from doing, but you need
Yeah.
something to like stimulate. You need like a visual aid.
I think, I mean, the biggest thing is that I don't want to have any conversation about like getting in a state of mind to do the work. If someone's saying, yeah, you know, it's really hard and like I got to get up and I got to do this, I'm like, dude, just do it. But what I find fascinating is why people do the things they do or why they're so passionate about it, or you
Which
know,
is the mindset.
yeah, like even Alex,
Yeah.
right? Like Alex loves business so much. And as far as I can tell, you know, unless he's lying or something, he just loves it. And all he wants to do is work. He doesn't really like doing outside activities. Like he might go to dinner, but he doesn't really like traveling. He doesn't, you know, I like to travel. And so I find that so fascinating in the sense of, one, I admire his drive and his passion, but then just also, wow, like what makes him tick the way he thinks versus having a conversation about, all right, so like we got to get in the mood to get up and do work. And I just, to me, I don't even think that's a real thing. I say, you're going to wake up and not want to do certain things. So yeah, maybe I am a mindset guy, but I guess I'm more interested, not in how they're doing the work, but why they do it and what got them to that point. How were they raised? And I just find that stuff extremely fascinating.
Yeah. So I still think that also goes down to like the passion thing.
Yeah.
You'd say would you contribute a lot of your success to like you were passionate about what you do?
Not really. I mean, I was passionate about not being broke.
Yeah.
I just was so sick. I can't tell you. There just comes a point in your life where I think you just decide, I'm just so sick of this, I'll do anything it takes. And I got to that point. And there's a real difference between people who say, I will do anything to be successful, and then really being that mother effer who will do anything. And so I just got to a low point where my girlfriend broke up with me. My family didn't think I could do it. I didn't even know I could do it. I dropped out of school. I torn my shoulders. Football was over. That was, you know, it's hard to go from being an athlete to not being an athlete because that's who you are.
Yeah.
That's how you've gotten all your recognition your whole life. I mean, that was for 10 years, that was who I was. And I was just so sick and tired of my situation that I was willing to do anything. I chose fitness, not because I was most passionate about it, it's because I was good at it. And that's what my mentor told me to do. I didn't start Elite COs, to be frank with you, because I was super passionate about it. I saw another opportunity. And so I think over the years, I've tried to work on that because the money is only motivating until you're not poor. And then you're not motivated anymore. And then you start, at least for me, I started, well, what's the meaning of life? And asking these deeper questions. And I don't have all the answers. What I can tell you is I do feel better when I'm in the pursuit and I'm working hard and I'm trying to be disciplined and be my best self than when I'm just having a completely hedonistic lifestyle.
Yeah.
I just don't feel fulfilled when I'm just sitting around sipping martinis 24/7 and whatever else comes with that. So I don't think you have to be passionate about what you sell to begin with. I think honestly, as you get better at something, you become more passionate. An example would be, I've been looking into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I don't know why I can't say that today. And boxing. I've never done it. I'm horrible. So
Why would I, dude?
Yeah, but so why would I be passionate about something I suck at? The reason I was passionate about sports and I'm passionate about business now is I'm good at it now. So I think a lot of times too with people, it just more comes down to you decide what you want to be good at and then you do whatever it takes. And yes, there's levels. I think in sports, there's levels to the game, meaning there's only so good you could possibly get, probably based on your genetics and dispositions and stuff like that. But the cool thing about business or things that happen with the mind is you can be short, fat, tall, white, black, orange, green, blue. It does not matter. It's all in the mind. And I loved how I was in sports for so long and I saw that the way you compete in sports is a lot different than the way you kind of compete with intellectual things. So anyway, sorry I went on a tangent, but I wasn't really that passionate I think I am a little bit more now. But I just was so sad, dude. I just didn't want to be poor.
Yeah.
And I
No,
wish
I understand that completely. Dude, being passionate about not wanting to be in your position that you probably have had, you know, for years, and you're just sick of it.
To be frank with you, I hate to admit this, but if OnlyFans was out 5 years ago, I probably would have done OnlyFans. Because I can't tell you how many, when I was doing modeling, if you type my name in on Google, you'll see a couple, like I used to do underwear modeling and stuff like that. I can't tell you how many guys would be like, guys, you know, like grown men, and they're just be like, hey Tanner, $500 for this, $1,000 for this. And when you're making $3,000 a month, you're like, fuck, $500 for, you know, a picture of my feet or some weird you don't care because you're so desperate. And so I'm also glad that happened because I'm a little bit more empathetic to people. It's a lot easier to point fingers when you're not desperate. And people kind of forget that when I had no backup, my parents couldn't give me money. I didn't have a scholarship, or I had to get a scholarship to get into school. Like they're like, yeah, you're on your own. Like, good luck. So I didn't have a backup plan, and I just didn't have any other choice. I just had to win. So I just did whatever I had to do to win. But I mean, to be frank with you, I probably a couple of years sooner, I probably would have been like, I don't know, probably OnlyFans OG or something. I don't know what would have been on there. One of
the original guys.
Yeah, like I don't know.
Tanner Chidester.
Yeah, like I don't know what would have been on there, but I know even like Alex talked about it too. Alex was like, yeah, I would have done Uber and been a stripper because we're just the mentality. We just are running from that pain. And whatever I have to do to get out of that pain, I'll do. So, you know, if someone's passionate about it, great. But you don't have to be. And I think passion actually comes from expertise.
Yeah. Like there's a book I think out about the better that you are at something, the more passionate you get, right? Like
100%, because you're good at it and people talk about you and give you accolades and all that stuff.
It becomes kind of like the fitness, like how you have that coat, that jacket around you of like status or whatever.
But
you know?
I think what's also interesting, just as a side note, is it's very humbling as a human being to be so good in one area. So for example, a lot of people would consider me very good at making money. But then I'll go into a BJJ room and no one knows who I am. They don't give a shit and they'll kick my ass. And it's very humbling to just remember that's why I just love learning is there's so many things in the world to do. There's so many things people are good at, and you could be an expert over here and a complete novice over here. And so I find it fascinating that there's so many things we can do in our life, but we can't do them all. Yeah. And so almost deciding what's most important to you and where you want to spend your time. And I find that stuff fascinating. For example, we brought up Gordon Ryan. Like, why does he want to spend his life doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? And I just find it so fascinating how he got into it and stuff like that. So anyways, as you can tell, like I love that type of conversation.
Okay, so now I want to kind of wrap up with your advice that you would say. Like, doesn't matter how generic it is.
Sure.
Like, what's your advice for the audience?
I always say the same things because all I can do. I'm an expert on my life, and so if I look back at my life and I could talk to my younger self, what I would have done is two things. The first thing is that if you have the opportunity to do door-to-door sales, 100% do it. It will be the hardest, most difficult thing you've ever done. You'll want to quit every day. I mean, there were things I said under my breath that like I'm not even going to repeat. It just was so hard, but it was so worth it. It was so worth it because it's completely changed my life. I would never have made the amount of sales I made without that. And then two is just hire someone sooner. I've not met anyone that I know of that just figured everything out on their own. Whether they paid for a mentor, got it for free or whatever, I just have never met anyone who got there on their own. And so it's naive and ignorant and high opportunity cost to think that you'll get there without help. And so what you're doing is by delaying it, you're not changing anything. Like people think, oh, well, if I just wait longer and I save more money, then I'll figure it. It's like, you really won't. You're just delaying the inevitable of where you're going to have to pay for it, either with money or time. And so, yeah, you could go on YouTube and you could watch 35 videos and pick the 4 videos that seem most legit and narrow that down and try it out. And if it doesn't work, I mean, you could do that, or you could just pay someone who's done it and get there faster. And, you know, I'm 32 now, so most people, you know, like getting close to like the midway point per se, I guess. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it goes a lot faster than you think. And even now that I just turned 32 a few days ago, I just will never, ever, ever not pay to get help if I know it will speed it up. It just makes no sense because time is so limited and we're all going to die. And so why do I care about cash, which in reality, once you have more than you need or you have enough to meet your basic needs, it doesn't really do anything. It just sits there. I've plenty of money now and I don't want to buy cars. I don't want to own things. I really don't need that big of a place. It's more upkeep than it's worth. I just pay for traveling and, I have a maid and a chef and that's pretty much it. Like, I don't really need it for anything else. So why are you just hoarding all this money to buy material things that you really won't care about and usually other people don't? And if you like that stuff, that's fine. If you want to, buy, I bought a Lamborghini. I went through my phase. If you want to buy that stuff, that's fine. I just find for me that it's ironic that people will say money doesn't matter, but then in the same breath, they won't spend it on themselves. And that's the best investment you can possibly make. So it'd be those two things is door-to-door sales and invest in yourself. And I don't say that because I do business consulting. I literally don't care. Like I'm at the point in my life, like I don't need to make a single more dollar and I'm good. But I just know that most people, they never get there. And I'll see people, it makes me sad, where 2 years ago, they were like, hey, I'm thinking about your program, da-da-da. And 2 years later, hey, I'm thinking about your program again, and they've made no progress. And I'm just thinking, dude, the amount of progress you could have made in 2 years just doing it already is astronomical. And if you even look at my trajectory, I'm living proof. I say this from experience. 3 years, $2,000. 6 years, $100 million. What's the difference? $3 million in spending on my personal development.
Yeah.
And I'm still not perfect, and I'm more aware of that. And that probably is a little bit of the sad thing is the better you do at something, the more capacity you realize you have. Michael Jordan talks about that in The Last Dance is the better he did, he knew he had another level and another level. And that's sometimes where people will say it gets dangerous because you just realize there's levels and levels and levels. It's kind of like David Goggins' mentality. But I don't know, man. I want people to do that so when they're laying on their deathbed, they just don't have regrets. And you're not going to care if you're successful, to be frank, because no one really cares and no one's going to remember you. If I died tomorrow, cool guy, great, that's it. So it's not really for anyone else, it's for me.
Yeah.
And just don't be afraid to do that. Because it's if that book we talked about earlier, Who Moved My Cheese, it just lays it out perfectly. So anyways, those are two things I'd leave the audience with. Yeah.
All right. Well, from the guy who spent $3 million in coaching to making over $100 million running a coaching business, Tanner Chidester. Thank you guys for watching, and thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, bro. Cool. Appreciate it, man.